Hey everybody, I am your host Sheekha Singh, and we are back with one of our special guests for the series The Science of Getting Rich, and it is none other than the director Douglas Vermeeren himself. Doug needs no introduction, but I am still going to go a step above and beyond to tell you guys a little bit about him. Doug Vermeeren is an actor, stunt performer, producer, director, you name it, and you got it. He is multi talented and he has been known for his amazing personality. And in a few minutes, you'll know all about his energy because the energy that he gets to your conversation and his mainstream Hollywood movies or the self development movies is just incredible. You'll know what I'm talking about in a few minutes here. Now, Doug Vermeeren has produced and directed five of the top personal development documentaries, including The Opus. The Science of Getting Rich is a self development documentary that is based on the book published in 1910 by Wallace Wattles. It's all about the different laws and principles. I am not going to give anything away. I want you to hear from the man himself. He comes with a different personality and charisma, and his talent shows. There's something about him that sets him apart from the others. He loves finding value in his work. He thrives on creativity and his energy. There's something about him that makes you want to listen to what he's got to say. Doug's talents reach far and wide, not just from television series, feature films, but also documentaries and many more. He's interesting, impressive. He's won a lot of international awards for his personal development documentaries. But when you meet him and when you talk to him, he is this bundle of knowledge and energy, motivation and inspiration. And he is awesome. That is all I can say after my experience with Doug. And I hope you guys learn just like I did after listening to this podcast episode. So let's not waste any more time and let's get to know Doug Vermeeren, the guy behind The Science of Getting Rich, a little more. All right, so there you go, everybody. We have with us the man himself, Doug Vermeeren. Welcome to our show, Doug.
Thank you for having me, Sheekha.
Thank you. All right, let me just get straight to the point and congratulate you firstly for this wonderful documentary, The Science of Getting Rich.
Thank you. Thank you.
I got the opportunity to interview a few other members of the cast, and it was interesting to see their perspective on everything about the book and the principles mentioned in the book. So, Doug, my question to you is what triggered you? How did you get that thought of going back to this book that was published in 1910 and making
Right.
a documentary out of it?
Well, what's kind of interesting is obviously this is our fifth personal development documentary. And so, how do we say, basically, the documentaries that we pick are often influenced by what's going on in our lives.
Correct.
And I think that, for example, when we did the first movie, The Opus, that story was really prevalent in my life. When I did the gratitude experiment, we were really looking at how gratitude changed things. And obviously, even in my own life, I felt like I needed more gratitude. So I wanted to see what could trigger that. And so everyone has its kind of thing. In fact, I think it was even fascinating that how thoughts became things came out just as the pandemic was leading us all into negative thoughts.
Correct.
And so it was, I don't know, maybe even beyond me that was collected. But now here we are with The Science of Getting Rich. And the reality is The Science of Getting Rich is maybe a bit of a misleading title because many people think it's just about money.
Right.
And the reality is I'm a firm believer that when we expand who we are, we get to expand what we have. And so the science of getting rich really begins with understanding that there are things within our power that we can do about our situation. And I really feel like in the world that we live in today, it's often very easy to say, it's the circumstances around me, it's the people that I'm associated with, it's the education I have or the lack of it, or it's the environment, the marketplace. All of these things are dictating my destiny. And I'm going to say that I don't think that that's really true. I think that obviously there's always good things and bad things at any given time in the world. In fact, one of my favorite interviews I heard a while back was with George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars.
Yes.
And someone asked him, why are there so many crappy movies today? And he said, you know what? There were always crappy movies. It's just we choose to see what we want to see. And if we believe that we're surrounded by terrible things, we're always going to see terrible things. If we believe that there's optimistic and hopeful things around us, that's what we'll see. And so I think the science of getting rich really is not so much about the external circumstances, but they're the things that are going on inside us. And if we can understand that if we do, like what Wallace D. Waddle said, if we do things in a certain way, we're going to see certain results. And so I think one of the biggest lessons towards wealth is to just start seeing opportunities for wealth. And again, I'm not limiting that to just finances.
Correct.
I think anything wonderful that a person wants, if they truly want it, if they're truly dialed into wonderful things, we've got to be willing to see them. And so I think that that's like just that whole idea of that being the science, that's really it in a nutshell. It told me that movie needed to be made because I don't think enough of us are seeing that in the world we live in.
Very beautifully put. And I think you brought up a very good point, Doug, where you said all of us, or most of us, tend to blame the outer things or the situations that we are in. We blame our job, we blame our family, or we blame, just our background or whatever it is. But we don't spend enough time to sit down and actually think, okay, there are opportunities in front of me. What am I doing about it? What can I do?
An interesting observation. So I wrote a book a few years ago called Personal Power Mastery. Okay. And as I did the research on that book, obviously it's so much easier for people to blame things outside us because that means we don't have to face it, right? We don't have to deal with it. Yeah. And so there was a saying that I came up with in that book as I was writing it, and it's simply this: if you own it, you can change it. And I think that this is the thing that most people miss out on, is that they're not willing to own the situation. They're willing to blame it, or they're willing to distance themselves with it. But the moment that we embrace it and we lean into it and say, okay, this is just the way things are, now we can change our thinking to start solving those problems rather than pointing out the problems. We all know the problems are there. We don't need anyone to point them out. But the minute that we ourselves own maybe what our responsibility is and being part of that situation allows us to separate ourselves from it and to start building a better path to something new. In fact, I'll maybe let you in on a little secret. I haven't publicly announced this yet, but our next movie is called The Lost Message. And that'll be the next one to follow. We're working on this right now. And some of that idea around ownership, you'll see, falls into The Lost Message. Of course, I won't give away too much, but the reality is I think most of us, that's the biggest challenge that we have for creating success, is we tend to give away that responsibility to other people or other things or circumstances. And we can't expect those other things outside ourselves to actually be interested to help us.
Correct.
Right? Yes. Family and friends may say that they'll help us, but the reality is they can only do so much too, right?
Exactly.
So we must own it before we can change it. And the science of getting rich has that as a very strong message.
Correct. I think you've indirectly answered this question, but this book was published, and I have it right in front of me here.
Right.
It was published in 1910, so almost a century ago.
Right.
What made you think, or what was that, let's say, top 2 things that made you feel, yes, this is still relevant in today's technology-obsessed world?
Well, it's interesting because I think there's a lot of, let's call them older or ancient wisdom that still applies today. And I think maybe even another way to say it, if I look at the mentors in my life, people that had taught me, they're often sharing timeless truth, things that really don't change based on the world around us. In fact, there's a saying that I heard once. It said, old eyes see best. meaning that when we go to people who have that experience and the wisdom, they tend to see things that, have always been and always will be, regardless of what the technology around us or the situation around us creates. And so there's core truths that will always be true for people. And as I looked at The Science of Getting Rich, I understood that there was a lot of that kind of wisdom in that book. Now, keeping in mind, one of the things that we did in this movie that I thought was important to do is to have a modern perspective from people who had actually used the book and had achieved great things in their life, just to demonstrate that these principles still work. And I think we were very successful in that. And the other thing that I think is important is if a principle will work for one person, then maybe it doesn't always work for everybody. But if it works for many people and all kinds of different people, then chances are this is something that will work. And as you've seen in the film, we've got Emily Letran, who is a immigrant who came literally as one of the boat people from Vietnam, and she was able to attain success, all the way to a young woman, I'm speaking about Angelica now, who even in her 20s, she's able to apply this information, to a former police officer who was part of a SWAT team, he was able to use this information, to even, again, law of attraction teachers. And then I know of two of these guys in the film that actually three of them, now that I think about it, that were at one time homeless and broke. And they were even able to turn this around and turn it into something that served them to a very, very high degree. So I think that if we look at it carefully, like I'm going to say Wallace D. Wattles is the book. The people speaking in the film are witnesses that the book works. And I think that when we hear their stories and how they applied it in a modern setting, I think it's very hopeful. And to me, it demonstrates that anyone can actually do this. And that's the thing that I really loved when I read the book.
Perfect. That's so inspirational. And to think that something that was written years and years ago is still valid and can actually be used and implemented for your own betterment is just mind blowing to me. With that, Doug, I know you said you wanted real life and actually real people who turned their stories around, used the laws and principles that are mentioned in the book to prove and to give this message out through the film that, hey, this works and it worked for us. How was your experience meeting these people and actually getting to know their stories? And
Right.
I want to know what your thought process was when you heard each of their stories.
Well, I guess it's interesting because if we look at the previous movies that I've done, some of these people have appeared in those as well.
Yes.
So, for example, John DeMartini is in all of my movies. He's an incredible man. In fact, I consider him one of my really good friends. John Ostroff has been in many of my movies. Marie Diamond has been in many of my movies. Joe Vitale has been in many of my movies, right? So many of these people, I know through experience that they understand what they're talking about. And I also think they're incredible teachers. Right? And Sharon Lecter I've known for a number of years, and I've always admired her teaching. I think she comes with a very kind energy with her that makes it easy to learn from. And I didn't have a chance to have her in some of the other movies. In fact, I would have probably had her in the last one, but the pandemic made it very difficult to kind of connect with people and meet. And then naturally, Bob Proctor has been in many of my movies, and he has been so kind to me over the years. In fact, even with my own personal books, he wrote the foreword on 5 of them. And so, it's been great. But when it comes to the newcomers, it's interesting because I've got to be very careful. I want to select the right people, people who I know have not only a story that demonstrates that they understand these principles, but I'm putting them right next to some of the biggest leaders in personal development in the world. Exactly. And so I've got to know that they are strong teachers, that they've got really good content to be able to share, that I can, trust them, that they're going to carry the movie in a positive and strong way. So I don't take that lightly. I guess the way to say it is I'm kind of always looking for diamonds in the rough, people that I think are incredible additions to a cast like that. And so it really does take time to find those people. Yep. Unfortunately, we do send away more than we accept, right? Because sometimes people, they have good content, but they're not quite ready. Exactly. Or their life experience, they haven't really found themselves, and they're still teaching other people's programs and other people's stories, that they haven't really risen or matured to the level where they have their own ability to edify and lead people. So I'm always looking for those people. But I will tell you something that, and I don't know, maybe this, I don't know. I personally feel very blessed to say this. Like, when I'm shooting this movie, there's a lot more that I learn than what makes it into the films. And
Oh,
just as an example, like when we shot Bob Proctor for this project, I spent almost the entire day with him. And if you look at the film, the film itself isn't very long,
right.
but there's probably less than, 30 minutes or 15 minutes even of Bob Proctor's wisdom in there.
Yep.
But I'll tell you, when you spend a day with someone like that, learning from them, it is completely life-changing. And I'm not talking about in a group, a
Yep.
coaching thing where I'm talking me and him
Yes.
together. And I can ask him any questions that I would like to, and ask him about any subject matter that I feel like I want to learn about, or anything I think he would know. And I got to do that with all those speakers. And so you can imagine, there's some stuff that I've been able to learn that, quite frankly, has literally changed my life. And I feel really blessed because of it. And, I wish there was a way I could bring every viewer into the room with me. Actually, it is funny. I shot some footage with John DeMartini. I want to say this was in London, England. And we brought the cameras in, and I had people line up along the outsides, and I did the interview directly with John in front of everybody. And so we did get to share it. And that was a really special event. And so, I don't know, maybe as we do live events for this film,
Yeah.
people can come and participate in those kind of experiences and see what I'm talking about.
Yep. Of course, I think it must have been really amazing. There was this term that Emily Letran used in her interview when I was interviewing her
Mm,
for the podcast. And she said, I consider myself a lifelong student. And that
right.
stuck with me. I've and I feel like I'm getting the same thing from you when you're talking and mentioning so much about how much you learn. So speaking of diamonds, Doug, I want to ask you what your secret is, because you are an amazing actor, director, producer, stuntman, writer, everything.
Mm.
Where are you getting this energy from, or the motivation to do all this?
Well, I think the reality is when we do something that we love, the energy flows naturally. When we do something that we're not passionate about or not excited about, we have to find the energy from other motivations. And so I think that this is kind of, I think, an important thing to find it within ourselves. What do we really want to do? Now, I know that's an easy thing to say, because I've met a lot of people who said, I don't know what I want to do,
Right.
right? Like,
Right.
I don't know. What do I want to do? The reality is I believe that we have to have exposure to a variety of things that we like to understand what we love. And a lot of times, most of us are afraid and we're shy to see who we are and what we can do. And so I'm going to encourage people, if you're looking for what you really love, um, you need to kind of return back to your roots. What was it that got you excited as a kid, right? What was it that made you kind of feel alive? And you may not find it instantly what it was, but you need to get on that journey. And remember, the world is a big place, so there's many, many things to kind of find. Now, it's interesting when we look at that word passion, right?
Yes.
What does passion really mean? Like, if we take it from, for example, the Passion of the Christ, right? The word passion, actually, the original Latin root means to suffer. I know that's crazy, right? But I want you to think about this. Do you love something enough that you're willing to suffer for it? Because the reality is
Correct.
even if you find something that you're totally in love with, it's not always going to be easy, right? There's going to be times when it's difficult, and when there's challenges involved, and when, it's not going to, be comfortable, right? It's going to be hard work, and you're going to have to fight for it. So the question is what are you really willing to suffer for when those moments kind of hit, right? You're going to have the high moments and you're going to have victories, but there are going to be difficult moments. So what are you willing to suffer for? And I think it's interesting that one of my really good friends, John DeMartini, who's in the film, has one time said that when your vocation, meaning your occupation, the things that you have to do, becomes your vacation, now you've found something that you love. And I definitely don't agree with the statement that says, if you shift one of your hobbies to be your job, it no longer becomes fun. I'm going to say that that's absolutely not true. That's someone who's speaking from a scarcity perspective. And the reality is if you found something that you love, the more that you engage in it, you go deeper with it and you find meaning that wasn't even there before of something that you love. And so you need to get committed. You need to get involved 100%. In fact, sometimes people ask me what success is, and I'm going to say if I could put the letter H and squared, like if it was a chemistry thing, H squared, it's got to be something that's close to your heart, meaning something that you love, right? That's the first thing. If you don't love it, you're going to have a really hard time being massively successful. But the other is close to home. And what I mean by home is, what are your skill sets already? Are you capable of doing it? Is it something that you can learn lessons to do, take classes to improve yourself, surround yourself with really good people that could help you? I sometimes see people who say the road to becoming wealthy is boring. Find something that just makes money and you'll do that. And I'm not criticizing anyone's choice if that's what they want to do. But I'm going to say that it's not really a matter of just making money on something. It's a matter of feeling fulfilled. And why would you pick boring and money when you can pick your passion and also make money? You should get both. Correct. Right? Yes. So that when you wake up in the morning, it's not, you just look at a large bank statement and you go, oh, I hate to go to work. You can look at a large bank statement and say, I'm excited, but this doesn't really matter as much as the fulfillment that I get from it.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
So I think that whole idea of abundance and overflow is both. It's how you feel about it and how it blesses your life and how you can bless the lives of others, right? Because that's the other thing too, is if you're good in what you do, you'll automatically bless others and you'll be compensated for the value that you give to the world, right?
Yep. Now a personal question. I think people have asked this before, but I'm going to ask it anyways because I wanted to know, what has been your favorite project so far? And why?
Wow. I always say the next one. Because the reality is, I feel blessed that I can continue this journey, right? There's lots of opportunities. And I've had so much fun with every personal development film that I've made. They have been absolutely a big learning experience for me. And they've been an opportunity to meet people who have very similar values and goals that I have.
Correct.
But also a lot of the mainstream Hollywood type movies that I've done have also been really, really fun. And I've, of course, had a chance to work with some of my heroes and people that I've admired. And there's more of these kind of projects that are coming. So the reality is it's hard to pick the very favorite. It really is. Because here's the thing that I'm so worried about with that question is I'm going to name one, but then I'm going to, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And then I'm going to name another. And you and I will be here for probably 2 or 3 years talking about projects that I've had so much fun on and been so blessed. Yes. And I think if we're looking at any of these movie projects, whether again they're in the personal development space or in a Hollywood type setting, you build friendships and relationships there with these people that are sometimes even cooler than the movie that you ended up making. Exactly. And then when you get a chance to work with these people again and again and again, I always say that movies, it's kind of like summer camp. You come, you get together, you have tons of fun making this movie, you meet people, you have great experiences, and then at the end you have to say goodbye.
Yes.
And you promise each other, we'll see you next summer, right? And we'll get back together and we'll stay friends. And then sometimes you do, but sometimes you don't. But then a little while later, you meet them on another movie or at a red carpet or at some kind of an event. And it's just like you guys were meeting again as though you never left.
Again, catching up from the exact same point
right.
you left off at. Yep.
Yeah. In fact, it's kind of funny. I just had this experience in Los Angeles literally a couple of weeks ago. Some of your viewers may know the name Cynthia Rothrock. If you don't, look her up. She's an absolute legend in the martial arts world. And on that film, I played one of their lead bad guys. I was a bad guy on that film. And on that film were people like Don the Dragon Wilson, Keith Cook, who you know from Mortal Kombat, and Richard Norton from Furiosa and Fury Road, and Patrick Fitzpatrick, who's done countless movies. Some really cool people. And my favorite part of that night, yes, I enjoyed watching the movie, but it was reconnecting with my friends that we had just built some cool relationships. And it's neat to kind of revisit that. And I have to confess, it's also fun in doing these movies when, by the way, not just the stars of the show, but we have a lot of loyal followers who come out to our personal development films. Correct. And it's fun seeing them again, too, these people who watched, my first movie that came out in 2008, and seeing they're still with us for the journey, but their life has changed, and so has mine. And it's interesting to see people who, in fact, I can think of one gentleman that I met. He was around 14 when his mother brought him to our film. What's that? 2008. Sorry, I'm not doing the math super well, but that's like that's 15 plus years ago.
Yes, yes.
And now to see this guy who's now in his early years building his own empire for himself, and he's now got a family and all of these things. But it's interesting to see how the journey of the tools that he's learned along the way have literally influenced and changed his life. Wow. And it makes me proud to be part of that journey. But it also tells me that, that the stuff that we've shared works. And, as this person applies these in his life, it's interesting to see how in real time it's literally taken him on an incredible journey.
That's so wonderful. Aren't you proud of yourself, though? All this work that you're doing with all these movies and documentaries, and getting to see the people, like real people, follow that and do something great with what you provided to them. Isn't that so cool and amazing? And
it is.
I know you said you the gratitude project and you wanted that, but I'm pretty sure that you have a lot of gratitude.
I feel very blessed.
Yeah.
I definitely feel very blessed. But at the same time, I have a lot of gratitude for all the people that have supported the films and my career. And the reality is most of those people don't really know how much of a difference they've made. Even those that come to the movies to see it. Honestly, I think oftentimes because we see, at big red carpet events, that there's these stanchions that keep the movie stars on one side and the audience on the other. But the reality is there could be no movie stars without the audience. And so I think they're a lot closer together than most people realize. And that's one thing I'm super grateful for is the people that do enjoy these films, whether the personal development ones or the other ones, because the reality is we couldn't make them if there wasn't an audience. If people didn't find value in it, we wouldn't be doing any of this. And so I feel very grateful that people do like the work that we're doing. We're trying to obviously always make things that they'll enjoy and benefit from, because I know how important they are, and I'm grateful for them. Definitely.
Perfect. That was so cool, and that was so amazing, Doug. Thank you for that. I do have one last question for you. If you could give one actionable item or a suggestion for people like us, someone who does a 9-to-5 job, has their family, but also wants to start building wealth, again, not financially, but the wholesome development, growth, and grow into this better person, just to feel good, feel better, what would be that one thing that you would suggest to our viewers and our listeners?
Sure. Well, I think one of the things that keeps most people from doing anything is they look for the big things to do. They think, if I'm going to, change my life, it has to be in a big, massive sweep. Or if I'm going to build wealth, I have to invest a ton of money. And if I have to do this, the reality is no, it starts with the small things. But you must start. And the return on doing nothing is always nothing. Right? So if you have the ability, if you know in your heart right now, there's something that you can do, even if it's a little thing, you need to do it. You need to listen to that voice within you that tells you that you're capable of more, you're worth more, you're better than you ever thought before. And I think that that's the first step. And as you get momentum on trusting yourself and gaining confidence and seeing what you're truly capable of, you'll be surprised at how far you can go. But the problem I think that most people have is they don't trust themselves enough to start.
Right. I agree.
And by the way, I'm not saying quit the job that you have and then go all in immediately. There's actually tests that have said that, listen, it's okay to start with a safety net, right? You don't need to put yourself in harm's way. You don't need to create a dramatic, it's all or nothing. And even this idea of burn the boats behind you, I don't think that's a good idea. I think that you should proceed to the level that you're comfortable with. And by the way, here's one other thing too that I've always found strange. Now, again, I've studied countless business leaders, right? Like, I'm known for that. I also just completed a study of 400 self-made millionaires, right? Oh. And so I will release that, by the way. There is a program we've just launched called the Millionaire Mind Stretch. Not mindset, because set means you stay where you are. Stretch is what you need to do, right? And there was a really interesting thought that came to me as I was looking at these self-made millionaires, and other successful people. We've been given advice for so long, you need to get out of your comfort zone. And I'm
Right.
going to say that's absolutely incorrect. There's a lot of things I'll never be comfortable with. Like, I don't cut my own hair. I don't do my own dental work. I don't know how to build websites. Like that's a lot of learning. In fact, Malcolm Gladwell in his book Outliers said that it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at anything. So if you're trying to become an expert by getting out of your comfort zone and all of these things, you're going to have a really hard time doing that in one lifetime. So instead of getting out of your comfort zone, I'm going to suggest you get into your brilliance zone. What are you really good at? What are the things that people really appreciate you, the things that are uniquely you, the things that no one else can do? And you hire people or find people to partner with to do the rest, right?
Wow.
That's really the way to fast track this. Now, this idea of it takes 10,000 hours to get to a top level,
Right.
the thing that Malcolm did not tell you is they don't have to be your 10,000 hours. You can borrow 10,000 hours from other people. It reminds me of the saying that Albert Einstein once said. He said that no problem is ever solved at the same level of thinking that was used to create it. But you know, the thing that Albert did not say is he says, you also don't have to solve the problem by yourself, right? So if you need a new level of thinking, call up some friends, get some mentors that are smart, focus on what you're really good at, and then delegate the rest, right? You can find other people who can help you. And I think that that's the biggest thing that most people think, because we've heard this saying, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. That's not true. If it's meant to be, it starts with you.
Exactly.
But what happens next does not have to come from you. In fact, one example I always like, if you do this today, go to like a HMV or something or whatever, anybody that's still selling music, and just find an album, right? In fact, one of my cousins is Elvis Presley. Okay, so I'm related to Elvis Presley. So I encourage you to do this. Go take a look at any album that Elvis has ever put out. He's arguably one of the most widely known entertainers in the world. Now, I want you to flip it over, and I want you to look at the credits and see how many songs he actually wrote that he sang. Well, the answer is there's really only 2 or maybe 3 songs that he had any creative input throughout his entire career. But who remembers him for the songs? The reality is don't care who gets credit. Partner with the best people in the world. Your name will still go on the label. You'll also still have money go into your bank account, and nobody will ever ask, was it always you that wrote this music? Was it always you that played these instruments? Was it always? No one cares, right? So be the director, the conductor of the orchestra rather than try to play every instrument. You'll find that it would be far more successful.
Perfect. That is genius. You know what? While you were telling all of this, Doug, I just realized how wonderfully you are courting someone who's successful in their own field, but at the same time, you're like, yes, they said this, but not completely true. They didn't tell you the other part of it. I
Right.
loved that. Absolutely loved it. I think that's what a lot of people miss is that half knowledge and the thing of not questioning what has
Right.
been taught to you for so long or following just that one thing. Oh, she did it that way. It worked for her. So I'm going to do it the exact same way, even if I am not fit for it.
Right.
But I love,
Well,
I
you
love
know, one of
these
my favorite
stories.
quotes, you've probably heard this. If you cracked open a fortune cookie, you pull it out, it says, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single footstep. Did you hear that before?
A
The
hundred
journey of
times.
1,000 miles begins with a single footstep. I'm going to say, yeah, maybe if you want to be lost. I personally believe the journey of 1,000 miles should begin with figuring out where you want to go. That's number one. And then number 2, take a step in the right direction, and you'll find out it may not be 1,000 miles after all. Right?
Correct.
So I think that
Wow.
this is it. We need to get the right data. We need to start looking at things differently. We need to recognize that oftentimes we're far closer to what we really want than we actually imagined. The problem is most of us don't yet know where we want to go. We haven't thought about it enough, right?
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah.
But this was amazing, Doug. Thank you so much. I wish you nothing but the best and good luck for the science of getting rich. It was a pleasure talking to you and having you on our podcast today, Doug. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I look forward to doing it again.
Absolutely, for sure, for the lost message. Cannot wait for it. I hope you have learned something useful and something that would help you transform your journey and get you one step closer to being rich and building wealth and being happy. If you want to know more, go check out the series and the playlists that I've linked here below. And if you haven't watched the documentary, The Science of Getting Rich yet, then go check out the link in my description box below to get a discount and a bonus. I hope you've enjoyed this and stay tuned for more episode in the series. Until then, keep growing, keep glowing, and be yourself. This is your host, Shikha Singh, signing off. Bye.